Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulih al-Kareem. Assalamu alaikum. It's your brother AbdelRahman Murphy here with another episode of Keeping Ramadan Alive. We are nearing the end of Ramadan, sort of a bittersweet moment of realizing, that we've had an amazing, amazing month of praying and fasting and coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gaining taqwa. And, the bitter part of it is that it's obviously ending. And, as Ramadan gets closer to ending, as Eid starts approaching, you sort of start to wish that it would keep going and that it would sort of be a longer month. And that's one of the beautiful things actually about Eid is that on the night that Ramadan has completed, there's actually a very tangible sadness. There's actually a very tangible sort of like a really good friend is leaving. Imagine having like a beloved guest over at your house for 30 days, someone that you love hanging out with. And when they leave, there's sort of like this empty feeling in the home, right? But Eid is there on the next day to sort of remind you that, it's going to be okay and celebrate your achievement of getting taqwa this Ramadan. And, one of the things that we can do to keep Ramadan alive and to not have such a, sad feeling after the month is over is to try to keep these habits alive. And one of the main habits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to keep alive is the habit of taqwa. He says in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. He says, O you who believe, and this functions as a couple things. This phrase, O you who believe, functions as a couple things. Number one is that it's a call, right? So that people who believe should listen up. It's like a red flag. The other thing that it functions as is like a challenge. The idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you truly believe, then, and then whatever he says afterwards, we should find ourselves already doing or excited to do, or at least we hope and wish to do it. And so taqwa is one of these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes. And he actually says that taqwa is a result of fasting. That we are written, fasting is prescribed for us, prescribed like a medication, right? A remedy or a cure for diseases. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that we can gain taqwa. So how are taqwa and fasting related? Well, when we fast, we are doing an act of worship that is extremely private. Every single act of worship can somehow be found out. Praying, is obviously an act that you can see somebody doing. It's kind of hard to hide the fact that you're praying when, you're bowing over or you're in prostration in sujood and sajda. Even zakat, even though, you're not going and announcing it to people, but at least your family might know, your accountant might know, the person you're writing the check to might know. Hajj is obviously one. And so there's all these different modes of worship that are very apparent. Fasting is the one that you can legitimately go through an entire day of fasting and no one could know. I mean, you can go fasting from morning till evening and really no one could find out because no one's going to ask you when's the last time you ate. And if someone offers you food, you can just politely say, I'm not hungry right now, and they're not going to think anything of it. Why is that important? Because this privacy in the ibadah is what makes it so valuable. Because just as private as it is, you can easily break it and no one can find out. I mean, you can easily go to the bathroom and quickly sneak in a glass of water, or you can easily kind of turn the corner and quickly sneak in a snack, and no one would know except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the definition of taqwa, is understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have a special relationship, one that's only shared, a line of communication that's only shared between you two, that no one else can get in on it, no one else can listen to what you're saying, no one else can hear what you're thinking or what's in your heart, and no one else can see what you're doing. It's only between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. And that's a beautiful relationship to have. Taqwa is oftentimes in the Quran translated as fear, by the way, and that's an incorrect translation. Although it might be related to fear, it is not fear. Fear is khawf. And khashya in the Quran is kind of like fear, but it's also based in awe. Taqwa is just God consciousness. It may have a component of fear, but it's just understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. Why is taqwa important to keep alive after the month of Ramadan? Obviously, it's part of being a believer, but how can we keep it alive, and how can we keep it at the stage that you and I are feeling right now? Well, one of the ways is to keep fasting. We have the 6 days of Shawwal that we can fast after the month of Ramadan. We have the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah that you can fast. We have, Mondays and Thursdays. We have the 3 middle days of the month, the 3 white days. You can do as many as you'd like, and that's one way to keep taqwa alive. But one way to keep taqwa alive, and this might seem very basic in concept, but in practice it's very difficult, is to stop sinning. And this is one of the things that we oftentimes overlook, is that we have sinful lifestyles in a lot of ways, whether it's backbiting, whether it's, immodesty, whatever it is, skipping prayers, delaying things, delaying prayers, talking back to people, using foul language, watching haram things on television that we should just turn off the TV, but we leave it on. Taqwa cannot grow in these atmospheres. Taqwa cannot grow in this soil. The soil of sin is not fertile for taqwa. And so in order for taqwa to grow and become strong and plant deep roots into your life, into my life, then I have to give up my sinful habits. And one of the punishments of sin, by the way, that the scholars write about, and especially in talking about the purification of the heart, one of the punishments of sinning is that a person, we talk about the afterlife being a punishment. We talk about this being a punishment. We talk about maybe Allah withholding the rizq as a punishment. That's all different. One of the things that we forget to mention is that one of the punishments of sin is that a person will lose their ability to enjoy good. If a person loves doing bad, then they will eventually lose the ability, they will become desensitized towards doing good. And that's a really scary thing, because if you think about it, every single person will reach a point where they are tired of the harmful lifestyle. Every single person, whatever harmful habit that you and I have, we will become tired of it and we will want to get rid of it. We will want to abandon it. We'll want to leave it from our life. But if we've engrossed ourselves so long in this habit, in this lifestyle, this harmful behavior, it's not as easy as it sounds just to stop. And they have many terms for this psychologically in mental health. They call it addiction, things like that. But in reality, it's the power of sin just holding over our heart. And so if we can't get rid of it early, then we're going to have a tough battle climbing out afterwards, right? And so the idea of taqwa is to get rid of this sin right now. So to do good deeds, to stop doing bad deeds, right? And there's a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ beautifully summed up the idea of a person who has taqwa. He says, إِذَا صَرَّتْكَ سَيِّئَتُكَ إِذَا صَرَّتْكَ حَسَنَتُكَ وَسَاءَتُكَ سَيِّئَتُكَ فَأَنْتَ مُؤْمِنٌ. He says that if your good deeds bring you happiness, right? And if your bad deeds or if bad actions bring you sadness, then you are a believer. And so even if we're not able to do all the good deeds we want, at least still love that good deed. If you're not able to wear hijab, that's okay. Just grow up to it. Start growing up to the idea of wearing hijab. Maybe wear it once a week. Maybe dress more modestly on certain days and sort of, gradually get to a point. But at the same time, that's different than talking badly about hijab, right? And a lot of sometimes people, when they don't do something, instead of just humbly accepting the fact that they can't do it, they're weak right now, they start to bash that thing, right? And so you see this, like maybe if a guy doesn't pray 5 times a day, and someone's like, hey man, we should pray more often. He's like, I don't need to pray. Praying is kind of like, that's a different response. That's not the right response. The right response is, I would love to pray 5 times a day. I'm working on it. And inshallah, one day I'm working to getting there. And I have this action plan in place that I'm working on and trying to get there. Instead of saying, I don't need to pray. Or are we even sure we have to pray 5 times a day? Where does it say that in the Quran? That's a different response. See, one of them is humbly accepting the fact that we're not there yet. And one of them is just straight up arrogantly denying it. It's the same with prayer. It's the same with hijab. It's the same with anything. With being bad to parents, trying to rationalize everything. Just admit it and say, I need to work on it, right? So at least love it. If you can't do it, at least love the good deed. If you can't stop it, at least hate the fact that you're doing it, right? And that's the sign that you are a believer, inshallah, and that your taqwa will grow in this fertile soil. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to practice everything that has been said and heard. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.